approve proposed Commission Order 29 for special big game tag license tag seasons for mule deer, white-tailed deer, pronghorn, elk, turkey, javelina, bighorn sheep, bison, black bear, and mountain lion for the 2019-2020 special license tag hunting seasons, and amend Commission Order 26 population management hunts. Presenters Josh Avey, Terrestrial Wildlife Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, I believe we've got a slideshow here for you. There we go. So we have two separate commission orders that we're going to try and address today. One of them is the population and an amendment to the population management hunt, which is Commission Order 26. That particular commission order is intended, or that particular hunt we've recommending, or we're offering up right now an increase of that population management for game management units 3B and 3C. We'd like to add 15 new general season tags for that particular hunt. They've had some impacts from depredation around the Taylor and Snowflake area. Based on that, the goal is to try and move them out of those farm fields. They've been moving back into some state trust area a little bit beyond that. So the general hunt is the preferred alternative for trying to keep the depredation down in that area. With that, unless there's any questions about that particular order, I have a recommendation.
Questions? You got a question, Commissioner Davis? No. Go ahead with your recommendation.
The department recommends that the commission vote to amend Commission Order 26 special hunts as presented.
Mr. Chairman, the Hunt Orders Committee has met together and discussed this and reviewed this, and we support the department's recommendation, and I'll make that motion that we accept it as presented.
Second. Okay, we got a motion and a second to approve as recommended the issuance of the to approve the Commission Order 29 is what I'm trying to say. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Mr. Director.
Mr. Chairman, item 27, authorize issuance of special big game tag hunt license tags to organizations for pronghorn, bighorn sheep, black bear, buffalo elk, javelina, mountain lion, mule deer, white-tailed deer, and turkey for 2019-2020. Presenters again, Josh Avey.
Mr. Director, if I could, I'll go back and I meant we're going to talk about the Commission Order 29 at this point for the previous agenda item. So we're still in the same agenda item. We had two recommendations, two respective commission orders. So my apologies for that. For the second one, we're talking about Commission Order 29. This is the special tag program authority, and the commission has this authority under Title 17, 346, and it's special big game license tags. And it authorizes the commission to approve up to 3 license tags per big game species. For the 10 big game species. With that, the mule deer stays as it has been. The recommended areas for hunting remain the same. The recommendation is to again go to the 3 license tags per the season, which would open August 15th through August 14th of 2020. So this is next year's. The same holds true for white-tailed deer. Those both are the same as previous years. Pronghorn then are also no change from previous years. Elk, the same. As we get into turkey, there is one adjustment with turkey. We are recommending removing Unit 20A, as that's no longer available to the general hunt. There is no longer a hunt in 20A, so we're recommending removing 20A for turkey. Javelina remains the same. Bighorn sheep, some minor adjustments. As you may recall, there are 3 different hunts for the bighorn sheep. Tag 1 remains the same, which is the units 9, 10, 12A, 12B, 13A, 13B, 15A, 15 ABC and D, and 16A. The tag number 2, which is valid for the units shown, with one exception, we're recommending adding units 44A West, as we've added a general hunt in that particular unit as well. So that would become available to the special big game license tag holders for the 2019-2020 season. Tag number 3, again, available for the units shown, with the exception of removal of the lower Blue River hunt area in Unit 27, as, again, that one is no longer available to a general hunt. For bison, we have an adjustment in this one, a recommendation to add Units 5A and 5B with the bison herd there at Raymond Ranch. And that would require designated bison, so and that would require a scheduled 2 week in advance to the wildlife area manager to allow for that designation to occur, and maybe some movement of those bison. Black bear remains the same, as does mountain lion. And with that, I have a recommendation for the approval of Commission Order 29.
Any questions for Josh?
None.
Go ahead with your recommendation.
The department recommends that the commission vote to adopt Commission Order 29 special hunts as presented.
Mr. Chairman, the Hunt Orders Committee has reviewed this and supports the department's recommendation. I'll make that motion that we pass this as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve Hunt Order 29, and I goofed that up a minute ago. I had 29 on that other one, but Hunt Order 29. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Mr. Director.
All right, we'll go on to the next PowerPoint. And this is for the Arizona Special Big Game License Tag applications that we've received. And this is, again, to receive the 3 big game license tags that you folks just approved for the 2019-2020 season. And once again, the authorities under which the commission has to move this forward are the 17-346. And within your packets, you'll also have the certification copy for the commission orders within your binders that you've received. Those, the guidelines by which the special big game tag licenses can be issued is captured under Rule 4120, or 124120. So the proposal requirements are all identified in there, including the timelines for specific requests, as we've discussed some in past. So with that, just to give a little history of the Special Big Game program, I started in 1984 with 2 tags, and those 2 tags generated $146,000 of income. And fast forward to this 2017, where the collective 30 tags that the commission authorized generated over $2.2 million. Thus far, in the 2018 tags that have been auctioned and or raffled thus far, there's been $1.45 million generated. That's out of just about 15% or 50% of those tags. The raffle, super raffle, big game super raffle, still has yet to occur. That will occur on July 26th, I believe. I know there's some representatives here that could speak to that. But then there are 4 auction tags that remain unauctioned, and then 1 raffle for the turkey. So the number should increase substantially, but we're still looking at over almost $1.5 million thus far this year. Additional history or culmination of history here, this program has generated over $33 million since inception. The special projects that are adopted through this are all adopted through the Habitat Partnership Program. And I had a little bit of an anecdotal story today talking to Sector Supervisor Luke Thompson about one of the projects that had generated for mule deer, where $100,000 has been dedicated over a 5-year period each year, and that $500,000 was used to help the Landowner Relations Program folks capture a NRCS grant, and cumulatively, that meant about $1.8 million on the ground on the North Kaibab. Those types of projects are pretty common. We usually recognize about over 100% match for the Habitat Partnership. It's actually 1 to 1.6 that we receive in match dollars for putting those projects on the ground. So again, for current year, the tags that have been auctioned, Arizona Deer Association auctioned one of the mule deer for $215,000. The Mule Deer Foundation auctioned another for $220,000. And again, the Big Game Super Raffle has yet to occur. The Whitetail Deer, Arizona Deer Association again for $27,000, and the Mule Deer Foundation for $38,000. Pronghorn, the Arizona Antelope Foundation auctioned one for $40,000. They have another that they have yet to auction, but will be auctioned later this month. And then the Super Raffle. The Elk, the Arizona Elk Society auctioned one for $175,000. The Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation another for $170,000. Turkey, those have all yet to be auctioned and or distributed, but we should find some of those out really soon and later this month. Javelina, Arizona Bow Hunters Association auctioned one for $730,000, and the others two have yet to go out. Bighorn Sheep, Arizona Desert Bighorn Sheep Society auctioned one for $315,000. Desert Bighorn Sheep Society again for $200,000, and that's representative of the different tags that are available for the different bighorn sheep hunts. The Bison, Arizona Bow Hunters Association, $26,000, and the Arizona Elk Society for $15,000. Black Bear was the Arizona Bow Hunters Association for $3,500 thus far. And lastly, the Mountain Lion, Arizona Desert Bighorn Sheep Society auctioned one for $6,000, and Safari Club International Nevada auctioned one for $500. So with that, our current year's applicants are listed below. We have Arizona Antelope Foundation, Arizona Big Game Super Raffle, Arizona Bow Hunters Association, Arizona Deer Association, Arizona Desert Bighorn Sheep Society, Arizona Elk Society, Arizona Mule Deer Organization, which is a new requester, as you'll see on your slide, the Mule Deer Foundation, the National Wild Turkey Federation, Pheasant Forever. Again, this is a new requester, and they did modify their request. I believe we've spoken to all of you about that modification. They removed their request for a turkey tag. So the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, the Safari Club International, Arizona chapter, and the Wild Sheep Foundation Midwest chapter, and that's a new requester as well. So go back just before we enter into this, just to reiterate, we have 30 special big game license tags to allocate. There's 3 license tags per big game species. The requests that we have received actually exceed the allocation for all species, with the exception of turkey, bighorn sheep, and mountain lion. And so you, at the pleasure of the commission, may want to consider acting on each of these different groups individually, and you may want to consider those 3 species that have only 3 tags have been requested first. A little bit of guidance as we have solicited these requests. The department recommends the commission award the sponsorship of special big game license tags using the following criteria. The organizations that promotes and represents the big game species specifically that they're applying for, the past participation and performance by the organization, and perhaps judgment of whether the tag will be raffled or auctioned, providing equitable public opportunity that way for acquiring that. So within your packets, you'll have these spreadsheets here. As you guys are familiar working through this with Amber more so than with me, so I'll try and stumble through this as best I can. This particular slide that you have in front of you right now is the awards from last year, so it only represents 3, as you'll see, for each one of the big game species, and you can see who they were awarded to by the commission during the last cycle. And then the next slide now is the slide that represents the applicants and the applications for each one of those species. And again, to go back and reiterate, the bighorn sheep, the turkey, and the mountain lion are the three that only have 3 applicants or applications. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it over to you.
We have some blue slips.
Okay.
To say we have some is an understatement, I think. So stand by, Josh.
You bet.
We're gonna. I'm just gonna start down the stack, and what we're gonna do is, we're gonna please hold your comments. I'm gonna put it this way: close to 2 minutes. We're not gonna run you off at exactly 2 minutes, but we're gonna try for 2 minutes. So the first speaker would be Don Byers. Come up here, and when you get.
He's not here.
Not here. Okay. All right. Bill Keebler, when you get to the podium, state your name and, like I say, close to 2 minutes, Bill.
Bill Keebler. The Arizona Antelope Foundation Board sent me here to represent them. Mostly, if you have any questions, what they're asking for is the 2 antelope tags, one to be auctioned here in Arizona at the Antelope Fundraiser Banquet, and the other at Wild Sheep. This is what's been done the last 5 or 6 years, and it seems to be working well. They believe that we get better money by taking one of them out of state. I'm here to answer any questions.
Questions for Bill? Thanks for coming down, as usual. Terry Herndon.
Hello, commissioners, chair, you fellers over there and ladies. I'm Terry Herndon. I'm with the Arizona Mule Deer Organization. I'm here because we're asking for 1 mule deer tag, a bison tag, and a black bear tag, and any other tags that are left over, which it doesn't sound like there's going to be many. We are a new group with a bunch of old folks that have been doing this thing for a long time. We are a heavily volunteered group with a passion for projects and getting things done on the ground. We feel if we were to have the mule deer tag, we'll be able to participate in the HPC program a little bit stronger and be able to ask for funds to help all over the state. You know, we've been a huge part of that over the last 6 years as I was with another group. And we averaged about 3,400 volunteer hours a year with projects every weekend just about. We're here just to ask for, we know we're a new name, but just remember we're not new. And we're here to try to do the best we can for conservation and to help the mule deer in Arizona. With that, I take any questions.
Questions for Terry?
All right.
As usual, thanks for coming down.
You bet.
John Colazar.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, Director Gray and staff, nice to see everybody again. I'll wait until you have in front of you the information that I'm passing out. We can do the easy one first. I'll take one of everything for the Arizona Big Game Super Raffle, if there's no objection to that. Just a brief note, this year we are again ahead of last year's performance. We do not have the ability to mail to the Arizona residents this time, but with the cooperation of the department, it looks like we're going to be using strictly email blasts to get our last month's efforts out. So we're hoping that that covers the necessary input by the public at large. But again, we're looking at another record year. On behalf of the Arizona Deer Association, you have 2 pieces of information, number one of which is how much money we have raised, over $4.5 million over the years that the Arizona Deer Association has been active. And that's $4 million for mule deer and $464,000 for coos deer. The second thing is that every organization has banquets. What they do with their money, the profits from those banquets, wanted you to, for those of you, and most of you haven't been here for 10, 15 longer years, thank God. If you go back in history with us, the Arizona Deer Association has a few project-based things that are pretty important. The 3-Bar Wildlife Study Area, which I know Mr. DeVos remembers very well, we funded on our own $59,000 of that so that the department could complete that survey, and it was based on predators. We also funded over $41,000 out of our own monies for the Kaibab Cliff Browse study, which refuted what had been a positive, or at least a practice that had been going on regarding determination for hunt recommendations. We found that there were errors, and based on our input of our money, that helped. And then this year, we know that the department could not and has not been able to ever actively involve in voter initiatives. But this year, the Arizona Deer Association, out of our own money, contributed over $32,500 so that we could stop the voter initiative in the process. So if you have any questions, I sure would appreciate hearing it now.
Questions for John? I got a comment, John. As far as the big game super raffle, which you're basically it, the commission thanks you, and myself as chairman of the HPC, we really thank you, and the contributions from ADA are not overlooked either. So
Appreciate it.
We
thank you. Anything?
That's it. All right, Miles Moretti.
I'm sorry, I was drawing a blank there for a minute. Mr. Moretti was with the Mule Deer Foundation and the Arizona Deer Association. We have worked together and are preparing an MOU for cooperation, and we are expressly interested in making sure that the remaining 2 tags of Coues deer and mule deer tag, specifically the mule deer tag, go to the Mule Deer Foundation. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Commission, Director Gray, thank you. I'm Miles Moretti. I'm the President and CEO of the Mule Deer Foundation. And we've been coming to this meeting since 2005, and we've appreciated our partnership with the department and with the commission, and we've been an active member in the HPC. Also, I'd like to introduce today our new regional field director, Corley Sears, who's in the audience, if he'll stand, who will be now working for us here. Also, Jake Jager, who is our cooperative biologist with the department, who's working on mule deer habitat projects, water projects, and that's an exciting program for us that we actually hope to replicate in other states around the West. We have had extreme success, just like ADA, in auctioning these tags. We've sold the deer tag for over almost $3 to $4 million, and we've only had the whitetail tag a few years, but we've sold over $200,000 there for auction. 2 years ago, we set a record $400,000 for a mule deer, only slightly beat by the all-time record by Antelope Island in Utah at $410,000. And then also 2 years ago, the whitetail tag went for $55,000, which was a record. And so we really think that our venue, the Western Hunting and Conservation Expo in Utah, is a great venue, and we have some of the biggest players in the outdoor world flying in their jets, and they are bidding on these tags. And the mule deer tag is highlighted on Saturday night. It's one of our marquee tags. The whitetail tag we marquee on our auction on Friday night. And also, I'd just like to say that we support Arizona Deer Association's request for the mule deer and whitetail tag. And with that, thank you. Any questions?
Questions for Miles? Thank you for making the trip down to this wonderful country.
Yeah, and thank you. I forgot to mention real quick. Thank you for all you've done for mule deer, and the Arizona Game and Fish Department received our President's Award last year at the Expo, and that was recognizing all you guys have done for mule deer. We thank you.
We appreciate that, and they kept it at the department. I didn't get to take it home with me. I got to take it off the stage, and that's it. So
okay,
got it
all
up
right.
there. But thank you, Miles. Okay, Andy St. John. Where's that paper at? Where'd you find
Andy St. John with the Arizona Desert Bighorn Sheep Society.
Welcome,
Chairman
Andy.
Ammons, Commissioners, Director Gray, thanks for having me. We're requesting the number 2 tag, which is the Mexicana tag that'll be auctioned either at our banquet or the Wild Sheep Foundation. We found that the Wild Sheep Foundation Sheep Show has been a great venue for that the last few years. Also the Rocky tag, which likely would be auctioned at our event in Phoenix, and then 1 Mountain Lion tag as well. We also support the Nelson Eye tag going to the super raffle. We think that's a great option, and having a good balance between auction and raffle I think is a great thing. So I'm happy to answer any questions you guys might have for the Sheep Society.
Questions for Andy? No, we appreciate
Thanks.
you coming and representing. Thank you, Andy. Okay, did anybody that I missed for number 27? We've got Regine. I don't know whether this Al Iden, whether he wants to speak on 27 or 29. I can't. He's at the headquarters. $27? Okay, we need to get him up at headquarters. Hi, Al.
Hello, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Thank you guys for letting me speak a little bit. I'm sorry I can't be there. Unfortunately, my travel schedule just kind of didn't allow it this time. But my name's Al Iden. I represent Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever. I'm the West Region Director. And we're new to this game here in Arizona. And I just wanted to say thank you for allowing my organization a chance to be considered for a couple of javelina tags. You know, what we're going to try to do with those is auction them off in our chapters up in Idaho and South Dakota, kind of give some people from a different part of the country a chance to see the cool stuff or the cool opportunities that we have here in Arizona. And we're going to combine it with a little bit of a quail hunt at the same time. So we think that it'd be kind of cool. And again, we're new to this and just want to try to participate and be a good partner in Arizona habitat any way we can. So thank you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Anybody got questions for Al? No, sir. We'll give you consideration. We got everything listed here. Thank you. Thanks, Al.
Thank you.
Okay, this is for 27 also. Okay, number 20, Rich Williams.
My name is Rich Williams from Scottsdale, Arizona. Mr. Chairman, sorry for the confusion. Commissioners, Director Gray, staff, I represent 2 organizations, if I may, Arizona Elk Society and National Wild Turkey Federation. And both organizations thank you for the opportunity to participate in this great program, a use of wildlife resource to generate money for all wildlife on the ground. National Wild Turkey Federation, Al Iden graciously rescinded his request, so we appreciate that. And Al did consult us ahead of time on that. That was very nice of him. The Arizona Elk Society, we would request your support for the tags that we've requested. We've proven a good track record with those tags and raising funds and participating quite heavily in the Habitat Partnership Committee. Thank you for your consideration.
Questions for Rich? Okay, that's it. Thank you, sir. Okay, any more for 27? Okay, Josh.
All right, if we can go back to that last slide here. Mr. Chairman, I'll go back to my recommendation, if at the pleasure of the commission, if you'd like to consider the 3 species.
Yeah, I'd like to go back to that slide where you've got where there's no dispute, those ones.
That's the one. Perfect. Thank you. So you may want to consider looking at the 3 species: the bighorn sheep, the turkey, and the mountain lion, which each have 3 applicants apiece. So there's no additional, unless you wanted take one of those and move it somewhere else. But those are requested just for the maximum number that are available.
Okay. So I guess we need to take a couple minutes, figure
All
out
the
what
time
we're
you
going to
need.
do, make a motion for you. Got no. Okay, Commissioner Davis, we're going to entertain a motion here for part of these.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we take the bighorn sheep, the turkey, and the mountain lion as requested on the current sheet.
Second.
That's what I said. Bighorn sheep, turkey, and mountain lion.
They're asked for.
No, there's three. They asked for the raffle and the auction.
See what they're doing, these guys here.
Yeah.
So we got three.
Correct? Those are the three that we have
All
no.
right, Josh?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Davis, you're correct.
We are
Those-
requested at the number that there are three.
correct. For bighorn sheep, turkey, and mountain lion.
Correct.
Those are the
Okay,
only
so
three
that's
that.
the motion to get that over with.
So that's done. And then you can cross that
Yeah,
off your
so you got a
list.
second? So we have a motion and a second for the first motion will be for to award the bighorn sheep tags, the turkey, and the mountain lion as requested on the list. More discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Okay, so,
Mr. Chairman, just so, I'll go back in the interest of the public here, just to ensure that they understand that's the Arizona Bighorn, or I'm sorry, Arizona Big Game Super Raffle will receive one of the tags for each one of those three species already, and then 2 tags are going to Arizona Desert Bighorn Sheep Society for bighorn sheep. For turkey, 2 tags that would then go to a National Wild Turkey Federation, and then for mountain lions. 1 tag to Desert Bighorn Sheep Society and 1 tag to Safari Club International Arizona Chapter. Okay.
right, that's what's done right now.
Correct.
Then the other thing that may simplify things, Mr. Chairman, if again, if you don't agree, that's fine, is could make a motion that one tag be, for the categories that remain open, one tag would be provided to the big game super raffle.
For that?
Second.
So we got a motion and a second to award one of each species to the big game super raffle.
To clarify for you, Josh, be one pronghorn, one black bear, one
Ones we-
bison,
yeah, the
one
ones we
elk,
didn't just cover.
one javelina, one mule, one whitetail.
Okay. Any more discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0.
So now you're down to 2 in each of those categories.
So we gotta get.
I guess I would make, what else, pronghorn? We give it to both of them to IAF. I'm not going to give it to them. So, Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
on pronghorn, I would make a motion that we give the remaining 2 to AAF.
Second.
Okay, we have motion to award 2 antelope tags to Arizona Antelope Foundation. More discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion on black bear that we will award 1 to Arizona Bowhunters Association and 1 to SCI Arizona. Second.
Okay, motion and a second to award the black bear tags to Arizona Bow Association and SCI Arizona, plus the super raffle tag. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0.
Now you're the bison. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
just for
Commissioner Davis.
purposes of a motion, and maybe it won't get a second, category of whitetail deer of the remaining 2, because we already did 1 of the super raffle, 1 for the ADA and 1 for the MDF.
All right, we have the motion would be for the white, in regards to whitetail, 1 for the super raffle, which we already did, 1 for the ADA, and 1 for Mule Deer Foundation, correct? You have a second? Okay, any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion on elk that we award 1 auction tag to the Arizona Elk Society and 1 tag, get this name right, to the Arizona Mule Deer Organization.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion under category elk for 1 to AES and 1 to the Mule Deer Organization, which did not even request one.
It's okay, they'll take it.
They requested and take any.
Okay, all right, so that's what we got. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Oh, we got to do that. Let's do the Mule Deer, the ADA, Mule Deer Foundation also. He's going to.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion on mule deer to award 1 auction permit to the ADA and 1 to Mule Deer Federation, MDF.
We have a motion and a second for the, in regard to mule deer, 1 auction tag to ADA and 1 to Mule Deer Foundation. More discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Pass 5-0. We got to Javelina.
Javelina. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion on Javelina.
Go ahead.
1 to the ABA and 1 to SCI Arizona.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second in regards to Javelina. 1 auction tag to bow hunter, to the bow hunters, and 1 to SCI Arizona. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. So we got left the bison, right?
Bison, that's all I got left. Mr. Chairman, on bison, I would make a motion.
Go ahead.
1 permit going to the Arizona Bowhunters Association and 1 to Arizona Elk Society.
All right. We have a motion under category bison, 1 auction tag to ABA and 1 to AES. More discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. I think that's it.
All right, Mr. Chairman, just for the good of the order here, just run back through those real quick. Pronghorn 2 to Arizona Antelope Foundation and 1 to Big Game Super Raffle. Black Bear 1 to Arizona Bone Hunters Association and 1 to Arizona Big Game Super Raffle and 1 to Safari Club International Arizona. Bighorn Sheep 1 to Arizona Big Game Super Raffle, and then 2 to Arizona Desert Bighorn Sheep Society. Bison 1 to Arizona Bowhunter Association, 1 to Super Raffle, and 1 to Arizona Elk Society. Elk 1 to Super Raffle, 1 to Arizona Elk Society, and 1 to Arizona Mule Deer Organization. Javelina 1 to Arizona Bowhunter Association, 1 to Super Raffle, and 1 to Safari Club International, Arizona. Mule Deer is 1 to Super Raffle, 1 to Arizona Deer Association, and 1 to the Mule Deer Foundation. Turkey 1 to the Super Raffle, 2 to National Wild Turkey Federation. Whitetail deer is 1 to the Super Raffle, 1 to the auction, and I did stutter a little bit when I was writing here. I believe the last one went to the Mule Deer Foundation, the whitetail.
And ADA and Mule Deer Foundation for that. Yep.
Thank you. And lastly, the Mountain Lion is 1 to the Super Raffle, 1 to the Desert Bighorn Sheep Society, and 1 to Safari Club International, Arizona.
That's right.
All right, excellent.
All right, we got it. All the motions are made separately. We're all done.
Okay, excellent.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Director.
Mr. Chairman, item 28 is Article 3, taking and handling of wildlife, options for addressing the use of trail cameras. Presenters Jay Cook, Region 6 Supervisor.
Thank you, Mr. Director, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Good afternoon. So, as promised, at the last Commission meeting, the Commission requested that we develop some additional recommendations for trail cameras to be brought back to you to this meeting. So we're going to do that today, along with some just kind of going through the process that the department went through in developing its recommendations, some of the history, some of the chronology, and the process that we went through to develop the options. Again, just wanted to recognize this is the Article 3 team from the department. Craig McMullen is our sponsor. A bit about the chronology. We started back this process right around about 2012, at the end of the last rule cycle, when we start receiving comments from the public related to the Article 3. So the team was formed as part of that process in late 2015. And so that's when our process started to evaluate the existing rule and start to develop a proposal for amending it. Also part of that process, we also held a commission workshop that also helped further refine the proposal. We also posted our notice of proposed rulemaking was posted to our department website. We had a number of press releases, Facebook posts. We hosted 2 webinars, both on March 29th and May 29th. Also, the proposed rulemaking public comment period was March 15th through April 16th. As part of that process, we also did reach out to a number of sportsmen's organizations that you see here, in addition to the other public processes that we had through commission meetings and our webinars. And just to update on the status of where we're at today, on May 4th, the entire package was tabled due. There was a 2-2 vote, and as I said before, the commission requested that we come back with some other alternatives or options, but just specifically to trail cameras on developed water sources. Everything else remains as is in the package. And again, just a little bit to back up a little bit about the history. A number of years ago, the department had growing concerns on the evolution of emerging technology and practices, and how does that affect hunting and fishing and the fair chase ethics. So as a part of that concern, the department created the Fair Chase Committee, which is made up of sportsmen organization representatives, industry representatives, department staff, as well as 2 commissioners sit on that committee. And part of their charter was to look at different types of emerging technology and or practices and evaluate whether they believe that those are fair chase concerns. And as a part of that, they helped to develop and craft a fair chase policy that was ultimately presented and approved by the commission in about 2015. And again, that policy was developed considering many different fair chase definition philosophies when it was crafted, but it was specific to Arizona. There are 3 main tenets that was used in the development of the Commission's fair chase policy, and forgive me, but I'll read them just so everybody can hear it and see it. Does the technology or practice allow a hunter or angler to locate or take wildlife without acquiring necessary hunting and angling skills or competency? Does the technology or practice allow a hunter or angler to pursue or take wildlife without being physically present and pursuing wildlife in the field? Does the technology or practice make harvesting wildlife almost certain and or prevent wildlife from eluding detection or take? Also, part of that process, we did look at a number of different states that are either currently implemented regulations on trail cameras or in the process thereof, or are newly approved and implementing them now. And again, so as far as our process goes in evaluating the rules package, and this specifically to the use of trail cameras, essentially covered the gamut of options out there. So it's starting with doing nothing at all, no action, so there would be no restrictions at all. We evaluated that, to a complete ban on the use of live action cameras as well as passive action cameras. However, the Commission did direct the department prior to this process to draft language that would specifically restrict the use of live action cameras, and that was and still is in the current package. We also looked at restrictions on all types of water sources and evaluated that, which led us to refining that down to just the developed waters. Also, we looked at seasonality, having an open and closed date for the use of cameras. We also looked at being species specific, for example, deer or elk or just big game. We looked at that and evaluated that. Specific units only. We also looked at a camera registration and or labeling system, and also mirroring our existing aircraft rule. And in evaluating these different types of proposals, we looked at it through these lenses, and some are mandated that we have to do as part of the rulemaking package, but also we put a lot of weight on evaluating against the Commission's fair chase policy. So initially we looked at, does it conform with the Commission's fair chase policy? Does this regulation add regulatory burden and or ambiguity? Is it clear to the public? What are the economic impacts both to individuals and industry that could be regulated by a rule? The impact of wildlife from a biological perspective, we did look at that as well. Regulatory consistency, both in the rule language itself as well as implementation. Also social impacts that could occur between both consumptive and non-consumptive wildlife users. And also we had to evaluate whether any type of proposal was within the authority that the Commission has. And so with going through all of that, the department's recommendation, and I'll read it here, for water, cameras on water, was within 1/4 mile, 440 yards of the outer perimeter of a developed water source, a person shall not use any trail camera or images from a trail camera for the purpose of taking or aiding in the take of wildlife. And also, just for clarity, there's been some confusion on developed water source, but that is the definition below it. It does mean any developed, placed, or man-made structure that collects or stores water with the primary purpose of providing water to wildlife or livestock. And so, as the Commission had requested, we did look both through our existing evaluation process. Also, with both webinars, we did receive comments from the public, and on our last webinar, we specifically requested recommendations from the public other than what we had already analyzed. However, we looked at everything, and so there are additional, again, this is a conglomerate between looking at what the public had sent us, the department evaluates it, and then crafts it into usable rule language. So this one, and I'll go ahead and read it, this is one of the options that we are providing for the Commission. Within alternative management units as established in Commission-approved hunt guidelines from August 1st through January 31st, and within 1/4, 440 yards of a mile of the outer perimeter of a developed water source, a person shall not use any trail camera or images from a trail camera for the purpose of taking or aiding in the take of wildlife or locating wildlife for the purpose of taking or aiding in the take of wildlife. And these are the department's alternative management units. And then please note 45 A, B, and C are identified as alternative management units. However, it is on the Kofa Wildlife Refuge, which does not allow the use of trail cameras, so they wouldn't be available there. But these are the alternative management units that this rule would apply to. Secondarily, this would simply be removing the proposed regulation, basically trail cameras on water 1/4 mile, just taking it out of the package, simply removing it, and also noting that the live action regulation would remain in the package if it would move forward. So again, just taking out the existing proposal, but just making it clear that the live action restriction would still be in place if this option is selected. The next one, the next option would be from August 1st through January 31st, a person shall not use any trail camera or images from a trail camera for the purpose of taking or aiding in the take of wildlife or locating wildlife for the purpose of taking or aiding in the take of wildlife. So that essentially you could not use them from August 1st to January 31st. The next option, again, is within 1/4 mile, 440 yards of the outer perimeter of a developed water source, a person who possesses a valid non-permit tag or hunt permit tag, or a person who assists a person who possesses a valid non-permit tag or hunt permit tag shall not use any trail camera or images from a trail camera for the purpose of taking or aiding in the take of wildlife or locating wildlife for the purpose of taking or aiding in the take of wildlife. The restriction would begin 48 hours before the opening of the hunt for which the non-permit tag or hunt permit tag is valid, and ends at the close of the hunt as applicable. And this was intended to mirror the aircraft rule. However, we tried to make it simpler and more specific due to the issues with multiple hunts going on during this part of year and confusion to the public. So we tried to simplify it. So that was our attempt here. So those are in total there are 5 options, one of which is the department's existing recommendation, and the other 4 as I had presented here. And again, this is the department's recommendation. You want me to go ahead with the recommendation, sir? Okay. And there is a couple other pieces I forgot about. So just for matter of practice, just to kind of highlight the schedule. So in the event that if the commission chooses to approve the existing package, it would go. It would be approved today. It would go to GERC for approval on August 7th, and it could be implemented on April 1st. If one of the other options are selected, it would trigger a supplemental rulemaking package process. So essentially, it would go to the Secretary of State for posting. There would be an additional comment period where the public can comment on the entire package. It would come back to the commission after the comment period in September for final approval, and then goes back to GERC for approval. But we feel it still could be implemented as of April 1st. So questions, and I do have a recommendation. The department recommends that the commission vote to approve the notice of final rulemaking and economic impact statement amending rules within Article 3 addressing the taking and handling of wildlife.
All right, we've got some blue slips. Just take them straight off the top. Like we did a minute ago, close to 2 minutes. First one is Gino Wolcott.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here today. Wanted to extend a special thank you to Mr. Davis for responding to my letters. It's always good to have a conversation, and I appreciate that. So I want to discuss kind of some of the things that you and I talked about back and forth, if that's all right. I know that you all have been working on this for a couple years, and you feel that you've kind of crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's. However, I don't see anywhere where Pope and Young, Boone and Crockett, SCI have had any voice in any of this. They're kind of the 3 champions across our country that really have something to put to the table on this particular subject. And I don't see anywhere where as a whole you've addressed any of us that hold guides licenses in the state of Arizona. No surveys, no real questions as to how fair chase is really being addressed here. I can personally attest to the fact that I have been blessed to take a lot of amazing animals here in the state of Arizona, and such a small fraction of those were ever animals that I ever had on camera or anybody that I knew had on camera. So I just don't see how this particular agenda that's being shoved down our throat here has any real bearing on fair chase. We work hard out there. We're out there as much as our wallets will allow. Whether you're a DYI guy, whether you're a grandfather, a father, as a husband, I am out there as much as I can possibly afford to be. And I just don't really see how this is a fair chase issue at any point in time. And I just don't feel like all avenues have been exercised. I don't feel like everybody has been spoken to. And I really wish that would all be considered prior to putting the rubber stamp on this. Thank you.
Thank you for coming down. Next, we got Tori Brock. When you get there, state your name, and like I said, close to 2 minutes.
Hello, I'm Tori Brock from Kanab. Just appreciate your guys' time for wildlife. On the strip, I would say that 2 things that trail cameras do that we haven't looked at is it disperses hunters. Right now, you got 80 tags, but there's 800 people out there. And we put hunters all over the strip due to trail cameras. Before, Whitmore would have a third of them, Black Rock would have a bunch, and now they're dispersed, and we kill older age class bucks because of them. Another thing is, I think it deters poachers because we have pictures of most of these deer, and they're not going to shoot one and show anybody because they're going to get caught. I mean, I've had 2 different cases with fishing game that I provided pictures for on it. Out of those regulations, he just pulled up, either no change or 48 hours before a hunt. I think would work over there. The quarter mile from waterhole is a disaster. I mean, it's not good for wildlife. We're going to be around the waterhole way much more, and the fawns will be, that time they're having fawns, we'll be pushing around. The quarter mile is bad for wildlife. Just get rid of cameras altogether over the quarter mile. Sorry. And that's about all I got. Thanks.
Thank you for the time coming down. Andy St. John.
Andy St. John, Chairman Ammons, Commissioners, Director Gray, thanks for the time. A couple things that I think I want to point out first, because I don't want to go too long-winded here, is there was the webcast, I think, on the 29th, and there were suggestions made and quite a few things brought up, which are some of the alternatives that they talked about. But I'm extremely disappointed to see that none of those were actually recommended to the commission. The recommendation is that as the rule is written, is how the department would like to see that proposed. So it, on its face, appears that the department didn't get the message, or at least, in my opinion, didn't listen to. There were over 200 sportsmen online, and I don't know how many were actually in the room, but quite a few folks on that webcast. The way the rule's written right now, with the quarter mile restriction, the circumference of 1/4 mile, or 440 yards, is 2,764 yards. It takes about 92 trail cameras to circle a water hole. Somehow, with the way the rules are written now, it's unethical, or it would be against fair chase to have a trail camera on that water, but we could put 92 or 100 trail cameras around it, and that is fair chase. I don't think that the way that rule is written and the way that it's proposed right now really addresses the fair chase issue. Of all the groups that was on that slide, the critter groups that the rule was proposed to, as far as I know, you don't have a single letter of support from any of those groups on the way this rule is written. And I think that also speaks volumes. Lastly, I would just like the commission to consider more input. I think mirroring the 48-hour rule with the aircraft and then having trail cameras not usable during a hunt is a reasonable rule. And I think that could support fair chase, where the quarter mile rule, in my opinion, can be circumvented and doesn't. I appreciate you guys' time and appreciate your consideration.
Andy, did the Sheep Society ever take a stand one way or the other on a vote?
We did not. No, at the last meeting, we brought it up and discussed it. The consensus was that, quote, the bus had left the station on this one already. So I appreciate the commission voting last time 2-2 and giving us a chance to come back and voice. But the Sheep Society did not take an official position.
Okay, thanks for coming down. Joe Sheehy.
Thank you, commissioners, for the opportunity. My issue with this, besides what you're going to hear later on this afternoon, is I have cameras on sheep waters. And me and my wife have both killed our sheep. I provide the game and fish with tremendous information from my cameras. As a matter of fact, about 6 years ago, they were not going to have a hunt in 28. And a Region 5 employee called me and said, Joe, we just don't have enough data to justify a hunt in 28. I said, well, would you let me send you some pictures? So I got a disc out, went through my pictures. There was no discussion about whether what I thought we should have a hunt or not. I said, just let me send you some pictures. 2 days later, I get a phone call. We're going to have a sheep hunt in 28. As this rule reads today, if I share any of my pictures with someone who gets a tag, and it's construed as helping him kill a bighorn sheep, I just violated the law. I would beg you to put more time into this. The department has not given you all the options that's been presented by sportsmen. And I think there is a solution to this, and sportsmen have had a lot of good input. You haven't seen it today. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for your time, Joe. Dorothy Dolan, state your name when you get to the podium.
I'm Dorothy Dolan. Mr. Commissioner, members of the Commission, I appreciate the chance to talk to you. As much as I enjoy hunting and fishing, I treasure so much seeing wildlife through my trail cameras. I have trail cameras along our cabin in Nutrioso and at home in Tucson. Bats, hummingbirds, javelinas, bobcats. I fear that this ruling takes that away from me because it's confusing. I don't understand what it does to my rights as a trail camera user. For instance, if I share some of my photos of elk that travel through my cabin area with family members who share them with other hunters, and they take an elk that happens to look like one on my camera, does that make me liable for breaking this rule too? So I think it's very confusing the way it's written, and I'm opposed to it. Thank you.
Thanks for coming down, Dorothy. Brian Ham. State your name when you get to the podium, if you would, please, sir. 2 minutes about.
Brian Ham from Tucson. First, I want to say that I'm not a big trail camera guy. I don't have a lot of trail cameras. I own 2. But I have lots of friends that use trail cameras for scouting. They set them at water holes, and they get so much joy out of those trail cameras and the pictures and the wildlife they're able to capture on them that I can't see why you guys want to take that joy away from them. Some of the friends I have to use these trail cameras and these activities going out there to take their kids out and get their kids involved in wildlife and the outdoors, and it just seems like a shame to take that away. It's a non-consumptive user of wildlife. Second, I really think that this rule is very unenforceable. There's potential law enforcement abuse or overuse or overreach that scares me a lot about this. You've heard the last 2 speakers kind of mention that. Where's it stop? As I mentioned, I have two trail cameras out. One of them is at a water hole pretty close to my house, and I have no intention of hunting that water hole. I just want to know what critters are in my backyard. It's on the National Forest. I want to know what's out there. I enjoy seeing these pictures. And for you guys to, well, the way I look at it is if I have a picture of a deer on that water hole, and then in January I go out there with my bow behind my house and shoot a deer, the last thing I want is a search warrant being served on my house to check my tail camera to make sure I had or didn't have a camera of that deer that may have been 2 miles away from that trail camp, from that water hole that the camera was at. I just see this as a wreck, a big wreck. Thirdly, I guess I've thought really long and hard about the fair chase aspect of this, and I've read your tenets, and I've read them several times. And the first tenet about technology and the skill, I don't think pertains. I know from my limited use of trail cameras that I don't have a good skill at them. I mean, there's an art to setting up trail cameras. You have to figure out which water hole you're going to put it on. You have to figure out where you're going to put it based on where the sun is this time of year, or the pictures won't be any good. So to say that there's no skill involved and this somehow doesn't make sense to me. The second tenet is obviously doesn't pertain here, and the third tenet, kind of says that, if it guarantees a kill. Well, I can tell you there's probably lots of guys in this room with pictures of big whitetail or big mule deer on their trail camera that they thought they were going to kill come the season, and that animal didn't get killed. So I don't think this trail camera is because you have a picture of an animal, it guarantees that you're gonna kill that animal. I urge you to drop this issue. That's it.
Thank you for your time, sir. Brian Dolan, state your name when you get to the podium, if you would, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, my name is Brian Dolan, and I reside in Tucson, Arizona. Thank you again for allowing me to comment on the trail camera matter. I was one of the guys that spoke to you remotely on May 8th, I believe it was, or May 6th. I was very pleased that you voted 2-2 to give this thing some more thought. In my opinion, I thought it was being crammed down our throats. I probably keep track of what goes on as far as rulemaking about as good as most people, most sportsmen. And even for a person that tries, it is confusing at best to follow this thing. So I think this thing just really needs to be slowed down. I think it's happening much faster than you would believe from the slide. Yeah, I knew you guys were working on this trail camera thing 2 years ago, but it wasn't until March 15th that I actually saw what the department's recommendation. And I don't know how many times I got to say that. I've only had a month. And everybody in this room, we only had a month. Yeah, you guys were talking about it for 2 years as a concept we all knew. We didn't know what the proposal was. And in my opinion, I think the proposal, like you've heard from other people, is asking for a train wreck. It's much more broad than it ever needs to be. It's addressing a problem that exists in a handful of units at a particular time of year, and it's it's trying to force a solution on a statewide basis. It doesn't really need to be that broad. It's kind of like applying a tourniquet to an issue when something a little bit more surgical could be applied. I believe that as written, these rules and restrictions will have unintended consequences that we still don't quite completely understand. We know there's several of them. You've heard about people that have, they enjoy just looking at trail cameras, whether they enjoy for hunting purposes or just general. I think that's going to be a problem. I believe there's some of the other objectives that I think or consequences are going to be is, the department and sportsmen have stated objectives, shared objectives about trying to harvest mature bighorn sheep, and I think this trail camera restriction is going to compromise that. We certainly have an objective of trying to harvest bison and buffalo up on by the national park. I think this trail camera restriction threatens that. I think the trail camera restriction also impedes people that have disabilities. I have some letters from some folks that weren't able to make this meeting that I'm going to be turning into the back. But one of them is from a colonel that's a disability, is disabled, and he's vehemently opposed to the restriction on live action trail cameras because in his opinion that impedes his ability to share wildlife resources in the state of Arizona. I also have another one from a father who is opposed to the restrictions on the trail cameras because one of his highlights during the summer is to go out and visit trail camera sites with his family and his kids and their friends, and it's one of the biggest highlights of their summer is to go out and look at images on the trail cameras, much more than they get out of fishing or hunting during the seasons. It's actually looking at the trail cameras is their highlight of the summer, and yes, he may end up using those images for a later hunt, but now we're going to make it illegal for that. I don't see that really is something we really want to try to pursue. So I'd like to suggest that the department hit the pause button on this and let's rethink the trail cameras. If you're hell bent on cramming something down our throats, one of the items that I don't think I saw here that I thought that had some merit is since this problem only exists with deer and elk hunts, then why don't we just make it applicable to deer and elk hunts? I didn't see the word "serve it" up there, and I know that's been one of the items that's been talked about. If we're hell bent on cramming it down our throats, then it needs to address, in my opinion, just the geographical areas where the problems exist. If you're going to cram it down our throat, it needs to address only the time frame in which the reported problem occurs, which is during permitted hunts. It doesn't happen during the summer. And if you're going to cram it down our throats, it needs to apply only to the species in which the problem exists, which in my opinion is only cervid hunts. So either get rid of it or specifically tailor it to what the problem is. Thank you very much for your time, and if you have any questions, I'll be in the audience.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you. Okay, Shane Roten, I guess it is. I probably got that wrong, so state your name when you get to the podium, please. Close to 2 minutes.
Actually, you said it right. My name is Shane Roten, and I come to you with the same perspective as everybody else today, that they've made some very valid points. Individually, I've personally spent over $1.2 million in the state over the last 4 years through the purchasing of Arizona's coveted auction tags. And as an auction tag participant, I can tell you that trail cameras provide a much different part of the hunt than everybody here might think up front. By prohibiting trail cameras, you will see a drastic decrease in the revenue created by those auction tags, and with the same impact on the resource. But I don't want to waste my time talking about that. I want to waste my time talking about what matters most, and that's the kids. I buy these auction tags not to kill the biggest buck or the biggest bull in the state. I buy them so that I can spend 365 days enjoying an outdoor experience with kids. I've personally brought 18 kids into hunting and fishing through trail camera usage. Arizona's is the driest state in the West almost. There's no way that the resource can handle big game allocations to youth who are begging to hunt. And in a day of electronics where kids just want to sit and play a video game, that doesn't work. And so one way that I've found to recruit new hunters is through the use of trail cameras. For them to be able to go out in March, for them to be able to go out in July, for them to be able to go out whenever they want and see the wildlife that these trail cameras get pictures of. It's not the trophy buck or bull. It could be a bear. It could be a bird, turkey. Doesn't matter. It allows them to enjoy the outdoors where they are introduced into the hunting lifestyle so that when they do get their chance to draw their coveted big game tag, they're there. The biggest problem we have as hunters is hunter recruitment. And I would ask the commission to think about that and how trail cameras play a vital role in recruiting hunters into this state. The other thing that I would mention real quick that I just thought of is I own a ranch in the state of Arizona. Our ranch is very rugged and rough. There are developed water sources, some of them game and fish, some of them man-made. We use our trail cameras to watch our cows and to keep track of them, to make sure that they are not going onto the reservation or other properties. As a hunter, if I use those images, that opens me up to a whole set of problems with the game and fish. So I'm adamantly opposed to this as written, as proposed by the Game and Fish, and I would hope you consider my comments.
Thank you, sir. Russ Jacoby. State your name for the record, too, Russ.
I'm Russ Jacoby, and I first want to thank the Commission for taking the time to hear us today. You guys have a difficult job, and I recognize that. I also want to thank the rest of the department that has worked very hard on this issue. At the last public meeting where we spoke to you, I appreciate you voting to give this more time. I was involved in the webcast that happened. I don't know if that's the right term, but I was involved in that. I submitted electronic comments. Those were not read into the public record. And I'm not faulting anyone for that, but I recognize I have a difficult job to do. I can't imagine how many emails they got during that time frame. But what I really want to focus on today is it's a very contentious issue. And it doesn't feel to me or anyone else in the audience that are against the ban that we've really done a good job of understanding it and applying it in such a way that we're going to really meet our objectives. I apologize. We work very hard in Arizona for wildlife. We haul water. I lose sleep at night trying to help people kill a once-in-a-lifetime buffalo. There are gentlemen that hunted for 7 weeks and did not kill a buffalo. And they may not get that chance for the rest of their life. Hunting is not about killing the animal. But the point is, I have 80 trail cameras out there. And despite using those 80 trail cameras, there is no guarantee that those gentlemen or lady hunters or youth hunters are going to harvest their animal. It really doesn't feel like we're doing this for the right reasons. And the first time me and many of the public have seen the proposal from the department is today. I was here hours before the meeting started, and the proposal was not available to us. So the department comes to you with 5 or 6 choices. I'm not even sure. And we don't even know which one is actually going to be presented. But this really feels like it needs more time. So I'm out of time. I will respect that. And I will simply ask that we give this more time. Thank you.
Thank you, Russ, for coming down. Laura Jacoby, state your name when you get to the podium, please.
My name is Laura Jacoby. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you today. As has been stated previously, we are just now seeing the changes to the original proposal. I would suggest that we take more time, let the public know about what these options are. I'm not sure that I'm even clear what all of the options are. I saw them flashed up on the screen quickly, but that's all that I've seen of them. So I would propose that we take a little bit more time and give the public the opportunity to see what those are. Additionally, as a woman hunter, I would like to see more women hunting, and as was proposed earlier by Shane, that trying to recruit more hunters. Specifically, as a woman hunter, having been in the field, I can tell you that a trail camera did not carry my rifle for me, did not hike over several miles trying to pursue an animal. There is still great skill involved in making that happen. I'm heavily involved in the bison hunting on the north rim of the Grand Canyon. That is, as even stated by the Game and Fish Department, a limited opportunity hunt. It's extremely, extremely difficult. Taking away trail cameras from there is going to make a difficult hunt even more difficult in tracking the activity of the bison and providing opportunities for the hunters to get them to where they need to have the opportunity to be successful. It's still on them to have the skill to actually harvest the animal. So my proposal is that we think this through a little bit more, as it is going to have far-reaching effects. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to come down. Tom Wagner, state your name when you get there in close to 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you for all of you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Tom Wagner. I'm born and raised here in Arizona, live in Gilbert. I'm a volunteer. I help. I may get a little bit emotional here, so sorry. Disabled vets get out. I'm here as an individual, not with the group I work with. We give champ permits to people who cannot physically get out there. Fair chase, you think about it. And now we're talking about a trail camera within a quarter mile of a water hole. I've got vets, paraplegics, vets who have lost limbs, who don't have the opportunity to get out there in the way that we normally do. We also have older people as they get, I'm going to be 69 in two weeks. You know, I can't hit the high hills as much as I used to. I can still get out there, but there are those who can't. This does not help them pull the trigger. This does not keep animals off of water. Animals are very adaptive. You be there, check a camera, you're gone. You don't even see the animal that's 150 yards away. They come in as soon as you leave. 2013, I drew a sheep tag. I waited for over 30 years for my tag. I was after a class 4 ram. I could have killed class 3. I was out there all month long of December. I was one of 4 people that year who did not pull the trigger. I'll never get another sheep tag. Trail cameras do not help you harvest the animal. And we've got people out there who will, not only that, but it helps in recruiting. I've got vets who can go ahead, and now because they are able to go ahead and be part of the program, and they can look at animals on water, their families are now becoming part of our hunting community. We're the second most urban state in the country, and we need recruitment. Trail cameras on water is helping with our young people and others to get the enthusiasm and to help us. You guys do a great job overall. This thing needs to be put on the table and rethought. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming down. Gil Chambers, state your name when you get to the podium, please, sir. Close to 2 minutes, if you would.
Afternoon. Name's Gil Chambers. I'm representing myself. I'm opposed to trail camera restrictions. I want to tell you a little story. I was born in McNairy, raised in Pine Top, hunted all my life with my dad, my brothers, my grandpa. Up until about the age of 38, if we had a tag, we killed a deer. They weren't monsters, they weren't trophies. About 38, decided that Costco beef tasted pretty good. So I started saying, well, I'm going to be a trophy hunter now. I thought I was pretty good. So I rock along there and I killed some pretty good bucks, coos deer bucks. Probably I've got 10 that are over 100 and some inches. Elk. I've killed some fair bulls, but no monsters. So here about 5 years ago, my wife draws a strip tag. So I go up to the strip. Sure as shit, we roll up to some water holes and they're loaded with cameras. And I'm thinking, damn, these guys must be knocking the fire out of these bucks, you know? So I talk a little bit about what's going on up there with my guide, Alvy Johnson. And he tells me, well, we fly parachute planes up here and we get to do a little scouting out of them. And, you know, a few of us guys have some cameras and some of them have a lot of cameras. So, short story, my wife kills a fairly nice buck. So I get home and I start buying some trail cameras. I've got about 70 of them now. Went out and bought me a parachute plane. Took lessons, bought a trailer. So I got some money tied up in it. I've had a fantastic time going out and looking at those pictures, being involved with the outdoors. I've gone 20 years without killing an elk. I've been 9 years without killing a deer. I've chased some monsters. I've had a fantastic time. I'm going to keep doing it. I wish the commission would take a hard look at that. I think that we're going down the wrong road, guys. I appreciate you letting me talk today. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to come down. Robert Hoffman, when you state your name, please, when you get to the podium. close to 2 minutes if you would.
Yes, my name is Robert Hoffman. I'm a retired nurse. I like to think that I'm the common hunter in Arizona. I bet you are all hunters too. I'd like to talk about the fair chase policy that you're basing this on. It says that without acquiring necessary hunting or acquiring skills or competency. You all are hunters. You come up to a water hole and you're going to be hunting in that unit. You look at the tracks. If there isn't any, you're going to put a trail camera in there? No, you're not going to. But if you see some tracks, what are you going to do? You're going to look at the tracks. You're going to be able to tell as a hunter if they're new or old tracks. You're going to be able to tell how many animals are in the area. And are you thinking that you're probably going to get a deer or an elk on that water hole? No, you're not. You might get them in a bedding area around there, but you're not going to hunt the water hole because every hunter in the unit's going to be driving by the water hole. Their behavior changes during the day, during the hunt. The other common sense thing that I'd like you to think about is, I'm messing myself here, is the camera is not going to pursue or take the wildlife without, you have to physically be there. The other common sense thing is, forgot my thoughts. Well, anyway, I wanted to tell you what you can do with the camera, what it tells you. It tells you what time the animals come in. They come in, like every textbook tells you, they come in 2 hours before sunrise, and they come in an hour or two afterwards, same thing with sunset. The big boys, they come in the middle of the night, which we all know that's why they get big. So the common sense thing is trail cameras really do not have anything to do with fair chase. So I wish that you would listen what people are saying here and either table these options today or vote no, because trail cameras really don't have a whole lot to do with fair chase. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Gary Drake. Gary, state your name when you get there in close to 2 minutes, please.
My name is Gary Drake, commissioners, deputies. Since 2011, I've been working in concert with the WMs in 2 department regions, doing a trail camera study, gathering information on sheep and their predators. Our cameras are in regions 1 and 5. Along with my counterpart, who's already spoken, in region 5, we have 75 cameras that provide valuable information, especially in units that don't currently have WMs, to check sheep numbers and disease issues between the 3-year survey flying time, aerial surveys. The current rule change as written would drastically hamper our ability to assist the department in gathering this important information. I would support the addition of the word cervids, in other words, elk and deer, to the language, and respectfully ask that you adopt the location of the rule to the alternative management units where the problem actually lies. I would also support the use of a particular date prior to and during the elk and deer seasons. These adaptations would make the restriction of trail cameras more enforceable by the WMs in the field. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Next up, Brian Fisher. And state your name when you get to the podium. You asked to be last, but you are last here, but we got a couple on the TV, so.
Good enough. Thank you, sir.
Keep your comments to a couple minutes if you could.
I'll do my best. And I appreciate the emails, responses from those of you who responded back to me. Been a lot here said today. I'm going to take this a different route. My name is Brian Fisher. I live in Prescott. Fair chase and ethics goes back to a lot of things, but I'm going to say this. When I go fishing, I show up at the boat ramp, and I see 30 trucks in the parking lot with empty empty boat trailers. I don't really get discouraged about that anybody else on that lake is fishing there. I go fish. I put my boat on the water and I go fish, and usually catch fish. I may use a different lure or a different technique, but I'm confident in what I'm doing. I don't have any better chance on that lake than anybody else to catch fish, regardless of whether they're using a sonar fish finder or not. It's technology. We've had it for decades, and sonar we've had for centuries. No one has a problem with those. I don't think I've ever heard anybody argue that. Guy with a sonar fish finder is no more or less fair chase than anybody without a sonar fish finder on their boat. So ask yourself this: is it less ethical that we use trail cameras and someone else doesn't? No, of course not. Yet people are okay with laser rangefinders, 100-yard archery shots, air rifles during archery season, 1,000-yard rifles during rifle season, sonar fish finders. It's all okay. I personally don't think any of those things should come to play or be enforced or banned by law. But some people those may seem unethical or unfair because they don't practice those techniques. But they're in no way unethical or unfair to the wildlife, which is the key issue. One thing we can be assured of with trail cameras that they have helped knowledge hunters, along with the game and fish department's use of them, counting sheep and everything else. And those trail cameras have helped people to harvest upper age class animals, which is a benefit to all wildlife. We've harvested upper age class animals of all species in all states since trail cameras have come to play. This is a law that doesn't need to exist, will not benefit wildlife in any way, shape, or form. It might make some guys feel better about it. But if great organizations such as Boone and Crockett and Safari Club International don't see any ethical issue or fair chase issues with these cameras being used, then shouldn't we follow them? These organizations have been the benchmark for us for decades. The one thing I'm certain of is managing anything led by emotions is destined to fail. So think about this, and I ask you to either revisit this and put it off for further review and more public review, or simply just put it off and end it completely, because it's not going to benefit wildlife whatsoever. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we've got, Ben, we've got gentleman at headquarters, Will Randolph.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you state your name and limit your comments to around 2 minutes?
Once again, my name is Will Randolph from Phoenix, Arizona. Grew up in Rio Rico, Arizona all my life. From these meetings, I just want to reiterate some of the positive things trail cameras do have. They do have a more sustainable approach on the land itself, where less people are having to venture to water tanks as many times and to walk around tanks. So it's actually leaving the land more undisturbed, which caters towards wildlife. It also provides us tremendous amounts of data that we can provide to the Arizona Game and Fish Department to provide better wildlife resources. And as another gentleman spoke today, as we all know, kids are very involved in their electronics nowadays. So having trail cameras does bring in a more appealing effect, where people can use their devices, and it attracts the youth to the sport of hunting, and we need that more than ever right now in a population that's growing, but the hunter growth doesn't seem to be following the amount of population growth. Another item, this is going to open up a can of worms in terms of enforcement, in terms of determining whose trail cam is whose, and it can actually create more issues for the department. And then number 3, I think the results speak for themselves. The last few meetings we had and how many people have attended, spoken at the podium. I mean, I think I've seen one person actually in favor of trail cameras versus over 100 that actually oppose this new rule. And this is quite frankly quite silly that we're having these huge discussions over something as trail cameras. And then And all this leads to us hunters. We need to have a positive outlook on the department, and we all need to be on the same side of the department. And as you can see, this is kind of causing some distrust, which absolutely at these times right now, with obviously the petition that was trying to go in effect this year regarding mountain lions, having distrust within our own department is absolutely something that cannot be happening right now, because we all need to be on the same side. So it is frankly quite silly that this is being caused by game cams, and I think we definitely need to reevaluate this. And since over the last few meetings that the department has said they have listened to the amount of people that have spoken against this, and they just proposed the same rule. And it didn't seem like they were listening to us when us as hunters pay the game and fish in terms of revenue dollars, and we are the most important people that need to be listened to. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Ben, we got gentleman in Flagstaff, Bruce Johnson. Hey, Bruce, you're on. State your name for the record and keep it to about 2 minutes.
I'll be much shorter than that, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, I'm in Flagstaff here for another issue on the agenda, but seeing the overwhelming opposition to this proposal made me think that in the 50 years I've hunted, over 50 years in Arizona, it took me 51 years to get one of each species without guides, without dogs, without trail cameras. I support the department's proposal to ban trail cameras within a quarter mile of water hole. And I think that there are a lot of people out there that feel the same way, but it's just not important enough to them to come to the meeting as it is for people that have 70 or 100 trail cameras. So thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Okay, Commissioner Davis, do you have that letter you want to read?
Thank you, Chairman. We got a request from Representative Regina Cobb to read into the record a letter that she submitted. It states, over the course of my life, I've held various titles which reflect who I am as an individual: a mother, dentist, and elected official. Another title is that of sportsman and hunter. With the life experience of these roles, I submit to the Commission this letter to you today and request that you read it into the record. I believe there should not be any use of camera technology within a quarter mile of watering holes. This is not a reflection of fair track or a true hunt. Please note that I do not entirely oppose the use of cameras. I believe that they are appropriate use in suitable areas, such as along trails and on private property. I urge you to support the motion to restrict the use of cameras entirely within a quarter mile of watering holes. This is a necessary action to preserve the future of Arizona's exceptional hunting experience for future generations of sportsmen. Sincerely, Regina Cobb.
All right. Anybody that we missed? All right, Jay, we're ready for your recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. The Department recommends that the Commission vote to approve the Notice of Final Rulemaking and Economic Impact Statement amending rules within Article 3 addressing taking and handling of wildlife.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Commissioner Davis.
I'll make a motion. And I want to, just for discussion or just a reminder, this is obviously a larger rules package. The only piece that those of you that made the motion at the last meeting send back was this specific area related to passive cameras. The rest of the rules package, including transmission cameras, is in this package. So thus, as Jay describes, notice of rulemaking for all of Article 3. There was a number of things, most of which were not controversial. But with that, I will make a motion for the department to approve the notice of rulemaking and for the Commission to approve the notice of final rulemaking and economic impact statement and amending rules within Article 3 addressing the taking and handling of wildlife.
Okay, so we've got a motion and a second to support the department recommendation. Let's have some discussion. You got anything else anybody want to say?
I have a few things to say for you.
Please do.
I was the person in the commission that was not here last time, which caused the 2-2 vote in the Turn my speaker on, that'd probably be better. Yeah? I'm the commissioner who was not here last time when the 2-2 tie was on. The more I looked at this, I thought to myself, as the first speaker did here, why have we not talked to the major hunting organizations and find out what their positions are? So I started out with Safari Club International in Tucson. I'm from Tucson. I called over there and talked to them. They did not see that trail cameras, either in the live action camera or the chip cameras, had any impact whatsoever on fair chase. They support cameras. I then called the Wild Turkey Federation at Edgefield, South Carolina, and talked to one of their vice presidents. Edgefield, South Carolina says it's not a fair chase issue. Most of our members have both kinds of cameras and use them in the deep woods in South Carolina and Georgia and the other states. So we would not support this and don't see it as a fair chase issue. I then thought, okay, let's call the Elk Foundation. So I called the Elk Foundation in Montana and talked to them. And their opinion was the live action trail camera was the only one that could possibly have an impact, in their opinion, on fair chase. They said the chip camera, where you manually go out and check it and bring it back and look at it, is not a fair chase item. So I thought, let's go talk to Boone and Crockett, a fairly reputable organization historically in the United States. And Boone and Crockett came back with the same position. In fact, I talked to their manager at Boone and Crockett, and he said the only possible way there would be an influence on fair chase could possibly be the live action camera, but certainly not the chase camera. We do not oppose them, and most of our members use them. Lastly, I called Pope and Yun. Most of you know who Pope and Yun is. And I talked to the Pope and Yun chairman over there at Pope and Yun. And his opinion was, and I will quote, simply using a game camera does not violate Pope and Yun's rules of fair chase. The use of camera would have to give the hunter an unfair advantage. Pope and Yun believes that card game cameras do not give unfair advantage, and therefore they were not in favor of this. Based on all this information and the fact that I've had a couple of my friends who have disabled children who take them out and use trail cameras on water, I'm going to vote no on this proposition.
You have anything, Bill? You have any comments? Commissioner Brake.
Well, as many of you know, I'm the new one on the block. And I wish I had 4 years of experience before I got into the trail cameras. I do want to say some things that, and I was warned by a past commissioner, just shut up and keep your head down and you'll get through this. But those of you who know me, and there's not many of you here, that's not usually what I do. I don't know what the real answer to this is, but I want to tell you my concerns. And what you all don't hear is we got 100 emails, maybe more than that. I was up to 11, 12 o'clock last night answering emails. And there's a lot of people that had a different opinion than you, and as emotionally as your opinion. So it's not an easy decision for us. It's easier if you just sat here and listened to this. But there's a lot of people that felt very strongly about that. I had people come to my house against this. Here is my concern. My concern is I'm a rancher and I just went through a mountain lion deal. And I'm scared to death, ladies and gentlemen, that somebody who doesn't as smart as you are is going to go out on my ranch and there's going to be a bunch of trail cameras there. And they're going to be from an environmentalist group and they're going to take pictures and then they're going to show a deer dead on the ground and it's going to go in the Tucson paper. And they're going to go to the legislature, to the great state of Maricopa County with its sister state of Tucson, and they're going to get a legislation, because most of those people are not hunters down there, and they're going to get legislation that's going to cut all of our throats. And that was my major concern. And so I'm voting for the recommendation, not because of punishment for you at all, but for being scared of that we're all going to get punished because of what I visualize is going to happen, because we're growing and we're not growing with hunters, we're growing with non-hunters. So for what it's right or wrong, I owe you that for my vote. I think I'm honored to be a commissioner. I sure wish I didn't have to go for this deal. Thank you.
Sure. Jim? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to acknowledge and again and thank Pat Madden, because again, we're talking about a package that's much larger than just this specific issue. So I want to thank former Commissioner Madden for his work, the individuals in the department that have put in a lot of time and effort. And I know there's some people that think that these proposals were recent or new. They've been in discussion for months and months, and I'm glad that, and by the way, I want to thank the folks that came today. I respect earnestly your opinion, and I do appreciate the emails that I received. Many of them very thought-provoking and very worth the reads. I'm always incredibly impressed by the intellectual capability of a lot of our folks to transmit their ideas and do it in a very effective way. And so I did appreciate the emails, even emails that I didn't agree with. There were very, many of them very instructive and very helpful. And I guess the last thing I would say, Mr. Chairman, is, I mean, I may not be the smartest guy in the room, and I'm certainly not a mathematician, but based on hearing what I'm hearing commissioners say, it doesn't seem like to me that there would be any benefit in going through with the vote with the current motion. So what I would do is withdraw my motion.
All right, so we're back to square one. Commissioner Zieler, you got a motion for us? I can make a motion from the chair to get us going. I'd make a motion that in regards to the trail cameras, we have no banning of them anywhere, anytime.
Mr. Chairman, if I have your
passive.
Okay, so your motion would be, in essence, would be to accept the notice of final rulemaking and economic impact statement amending the rules within Article 3 addressing the taking and handling of wildlife, except for the passive camera
on the water
recommendation.
Yes.
On passive camera use on water holes.
Right. No,
I just want to make sure I heard.
The live action cameras have already been taken care of. That's under the.
It's in the rest of the art, but you're approving. You need to approve all of Article 3.
No banning of any trail cameras anywhere in the state. That is the other extreme from what we just had.
So you're approving. Jay, you have it right. You need a motion based on what the chairman is saying, is approving the Article 3 rulemaking for the take of wildlife with the exception of passive trail cameras on water, correct?
Not on water, just any.
Or
just any.
Passive, period. Okay.
So we don't touch trail cameras at all.
That's right.
No,
except for the live action.
Right. So that's the only difference is what Jay has up here.
And I'll tell you, my thinking about banning them, some sort of banning, is we're going to make some crooks out of somebody that doesn't intend to be one. Whether it be a kid or whether it be somebody that's paralyzed, whatever it might be. So I'm just saying, stick with it right now, no ban.
Do you want a second?
If we get a second, we can get it for discussion. If not...
You have a second.
So we got a motion and a second for no banning of the passive trail cameras.
But the
rest of the rules going on through.
The rest of the rules, Article 3 rules package for the take.
Which would include live action cameras.
Which would include live action cameras.
Members of the commission, before you take a vote, if I could
offer some information on how the process will need to work based upon the decision that you make here today.
Jay did earlier.
I just want to make sure, because I want you to understand that this doesn't end the process at this point.
Right.
Okay.
Jay said earlier that now we'll have to go back out and open up for further public comment, and he got back to these timelines.
Jim, this is not going to complete the process for Article 3?
No. It'll go to this timeline and this process that's in front.
So, Mr. Chairman or Jim, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. So, if with the motion that is made, if it passes, then it would trigger a supplemental rulemaking package. So that piece, the entire package would have to be put into this supplemental rulemaking package, so that it has to be posted with the Secretary of State. There will be, after that, it will be a second 30-day comment period. After that, we would come back to the commission in September and present that, but that would, again, would approve the entire package with that one amendment.
Right.
All right.
That's so,
clear?
and I think so people understand that is because this would be considered a substantive change, which then resets clocks for comment, and that's why that timeline goes back into effect, because in essence this is a substantive change. So this is following the requirements, rules, statutes of rulemaking.
Okay, more discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I've got some comments. I wrote these down so I didn't forget them, but let me just read this. Just going back a little bit, the intent of the commission was to task the department and a Fair Chase committee with evaluating whether or not the use of these trail cameras, both transmitting and passive, to pursue wildlife was a violation of fair chase. You know, our job as commissioners, which we take very seriously and approach with a great deal of personal accountability and responsibility, is to evaluate whether this recommendation to determine if it effectively addresses the fair chase issues, while B, ensuring that it doesn't cause any collateral damage in areas where it isn't a clear violation of fair chase and new regulations aren't necessary. I appreciate the department and our Fair Chase committee for tackling what's turned out to be a very complex and emotional issue, and for spending the past 25 months evaluating and reevaluating solutions and recommendations on if and how trail cameras and other technologies should be regulated in Arizona. We as commissioners have received, some of these other commissioners have made this comment, we've received and listened to each and every one of your comments, and we've taken them under consideration. I've personally received comments, very passionate comments, by the way, from those who make these valid arguments on vastly different ends of the spectrum, and everyone has been passionate about the subject. I personally do not believe that one camera on one water constitutes a violation of fair chase. I do recognize, though, that there can be other scenarios, specifically with the commercialization of live action trail camera photos and or complete saturation of an area and its waters can clearly be violations of fair chase. But when I distill this all down, what I've come to find is I'm convinced that there's not a perfect solution to this problem. But I'm also very concerned with the fact of I don't want to cause any collateral damage where it's not necessary or add additional regulations. But with that said, I also don't believe that doing nothing is a good solution either. So with that said, I'm going to support this, and I'm going to vote for the motion that's currently on the floor to continue to keep the rule package the way it stands, which would ban the use of the live action trail cameras and leave the passive trail cameras alone.
Okay, more discussion? So the motion is packages stand as it is accepted with now we're going to have no ban on trail cameras, passive trail cameras anywhere in the state. All in favor? Aye.
I have a question, if I might.
No.
So I assume that if we don't have that issue any longer, the quarter mile from a water hole is no longer an issue.
That's
right?
not-
That's no longer an issue. So we're clear. Okay. That's fine.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. Break. Yeah, we need more. We need a little break. I'm sorry? We're going to take a 10-minute break.